Letting Go by David R. Hawkins presents a practical guide to emotional freedom and the achievement of inner peace by using a technique called letting go. Hawkins emphasizes that holding on to negative emotions, whether consciously or unconsciously, creates suffering and keeps people stuck in lower states of consciousness. He argues that surrendering or releasing these emotions allows one to experience life at a higher level, closer to love, joy, and peace. Hawkins explains that emotions are not just mental states, but they have energy fields that influence our perceptions, behaviors, and reactions. The key to improving our mental, emotional, and even physical health is learning how to let go of these negative energy fields, allowing us to move up the ladder of consciousness. The book presents a method for how to do this, while covering various emotional states, their effects, and ways to work with them. Chapter 1. Hawkins begins by discussing the general mechanism of letting go. He explains that people tend to manage their emotions in one of three ways: suppression, expression, or escape. Suppression involves pushing the emotion down, keeping it from reaching the surface. Expression means acting out the emotion, whether verbally or physically. Escape entails distracting oneself from the emotion by focusing on something else, like work or entertainment. However, none of these approaches effectively resolve the emotion. They only prolong its existence, and over time, the suppressed or unprocessed emotions accumulate and begin to manifest as physical ailments, mental stress, or interpersonal conflicts. This is where letting go comes in. The technique is about allowing the emotion to be present without resisting, suppressing, or trying to control it. Rather than avoiding or acting on it, you simply let it be, observe it, and allow it to dissipate on its own. This process is natural, Hawkins notes, but because we are conditioned to avoid negative emotions, it often feels counterintuitive. He emphasizes that the more we let go of emotions, the more peaceful and light we feel. The first step is to be aware of the feeling, without labeling it or attaching a narrative to it. Once the feeling is acknowledged, it can naturally release itself. Hawkins calls this the pathway of surrender, which involves continuously surrendering emotions as they arise, allowing them to resolve and not get stuck. Chapter 2. The Mind and Emotions. This chapter, Hawkins dives deeper into the relationship between the mind and emotions. He notes that much of our emotional suffering comes from the stories we tell ourselves about what we are feeling. These mental narratives often fuel our negative emotions and keep them going long after the initial trigger is gone. For example, a person might feel anger because they've been insulted. Instead of simply acknowledging the anger and letting it go, the mind starts to spin a story around it. How dare they talk to me like that? I'll never forgive them. This mental chatter keeps the anger alive and even intensifies it. Hawkins advises us to focus on the feeling itself rather than the thoughts surrounding it. By doing this, we can short-circuit the cycle of emotional reactivity. The feeling, once acknowledged, naturally dissipates. By not feeding the emotion with mental narratives or resisting it, we allow it to pass through us more quickly. He also points out that emotions are contagious and that they influence not only our perceptions of ourselves, but also how we view the world. If we are stuck in anger or fear, our worldview will reflect that emotional state. Conversely, as we release these lower emotions, our perception of reality changes and becomes more positive. Chapter 3. The Nature of Feelings. In this chapter, Hawkins explains that feelings are a natural and universal part of the human experience, and each person has a variety of emotions ranging from low-energy feelings such as shame and guilt to high-energy feelings like love and peace. These emotions operate at different vibrational levels, which Hawkins refers to as energy fields. Negative emotions such as fear, anger, and guilt are lower energy fields that pull us down and keep us stuck. Positive emotions, on the other hand, lift us up and allow us to experience life with more clarity, joy, and love. The pathway to higher consciousness is paved with the letting go of these lower emotions. Hawkins introduces the idea that the human body stores emotions. Suppressed emotions do not disappear. They remain within us, affecting our mental and physical health. Over time, these stored emotions can lead to physical ailments, mental stress, and dysfunction in relationships. By surrendering and releasing these emotions, we free up the body's energy system and allow ourselves to experience greater well-being. He emphasizes that while emotions are temporary, they become prolonged and more intense when we resist them. For instance, an emotion like anger may only last a few minutes if fully felt and acknowledged. But if we suppress or deny it, that anger can remain with us for years, manifesting in various ways like resentment, irritability, or even physical illness. Chapter 4: Stress and Emotional Letting Go. In this chapter, Hawkins connects the accumulation of negative emotions with the experience of stress. Much of the stress people experience in life, he says, is not due to external circumstances, but rather the buildup of unresolved emotional energy. When emotions are suppressed or resisted, they create tension in the body and mind, leading to stress. One of the primary causes of stress, Hawkins argues, is the desire for control. We often try to control our circumstances, other people, or even our emotions. However, this constant attempt to control what is inherently uncontrollable only creates more stress. The act of letting go involves surrendering this need for control and allowing emotions to flow naturally. Hawkins suggests that stress is not just mental, but also manifests physically. Chronic stress weakens the body's immune system, making it more susceptible to illness. This is why emotional release is so important for overall health and well-being. When emotions are released, the body relaxes, and stress-related health problems, such as anxiety, insomnia, and chronic pain, begin to heal. Chapter 5: The Willingness to Let Go. Willingness is a central theme in the process of letting go. According to Hawkins, many people hold on to negative emotions because they believe it serves them in some way. For instance, someone might hold on to anger because they think it gives them strength or control in a situation. However, this mindset only prolongs suffering. Letting go requires a willingness to feel and release emotions without clinging to them or trying to rationalize them. Hawkins emphasizes that emotions are not permanent. They are energy that can be released with conscious effort. By being willing to surrender emotions, we open ourselves up to healing and growth. Fear often prevents people from letting go. Fear of the unknown, fear of vulnerability, or fear of losing control can keep individuals trapped in emotional patterns. However, Hawkins reassures readers that there is nothing to fear in the process of letting go. In fact, the more we let go, the more peace and freedom we experience. Willingness also applies to forgiving ourselves for past mistakes. Many people carry guilt or shame, believing that they deserve to suffer because of their actions. But Hawkins argues that these emotions do not serve us. They only keep us trapped in lower states of consciousness. By forgiving ourselves, we let go of the emotional burden and open ourselves up to joy and love. Chapter 6: The Role of Forgiveness. Forgiveness plays a significant role in the process of letting go. Hawkins explains that forgiveness is not about condoning harmful behavior or excusing what others have done to us. Instead, forgiveness is about releasing the emotional burden we carry from holding on to anger, resentment, or grudges. When we refuse to forgive, we are essentially chaining ourselves to the past. This prevents us from moving forward in life and keeps us stuck in lower levels of consciousness. Hawkins points out that forgiveness is a powerful tool for emotional release because it frees us from the pain and suffering associated with the past. Forgiveness begins with ourselves. Many people are harder on themselves than they are on others, holding on to guilt or shame for years. Hawkins encourages self-compassion, and reminds readers that we are all human and make mistakes. By forgiving ourselves, we release the emotional baggage that holds us back and allow ourselves to grow. Chapter 7: Guilt and Atonement. Guilt is one of the most powerful emotions that can weigh down our consciousness, and it often leads to feelings of unworthiness, shame, and self-punishment. In this chapter, Hawkins explores how guilt affects our emotional and mental well-being and offers a pathway to atonement and release. Many people hold on to guilt because they believe that they must punish themselves for their mistakes. This self-punishment, however, does not lead to growth or healing. It only perpetuates suffering. Hawkins explains that guilt is unnecessary once we have acknowledged our mistakes and taken responsibility for our actions. Atonement, according to Hawkins, involves making amends where necessary, but then releasing the guilt and moving on. Holding on to guilt does not serve us or anyone else. Once we have learned from our mistakes, we must let go of the guilt and allow ourselves to experience peace. By releasing guilt, we free up energy that can be used for more positive purposes. We also allow ourselves to be more compassionate toward others, as we recognize that everyone makes mistakes and that forgiveness is a part of the human experience. Chapter 8: Fear and courage. Fear is one of the most pervasive emotions that keeps people stuck in lower levels of consciousness. Hawkins explores the nature of fear and its relationship to control, uncertainty, and vulnerability. He explains that fear often arises when we feel we cannot predict or control the future. The antidote to fear is courage. Hawkins emphasizes that courage is not the absence of fear, but the willingness to face it. When we confront our fears head-on, we begin to see that they are often exaggerated and not as powerful as we initially believed. Hawkins also points out that fear often disguises itself as other emotions, such as anger, anxiety, or avoidance. By recognizing the underlying fear and addressing it directly, we can begin to let go of it and experience more peace and freedom. Courage involves being willing to experience discomfort and uncertainty. It requires us to let go of the need for control and trust in the process of life. As we let go of fear, we open ourselves up to new opportunities and possibilities. Chapter 9: Grief and Loss. Grief is an emotion that often arises in response to loss, whether it be the loss of a loved one, a job, or a significant life change. Hawkins explains that grief is a natural part of the human experience, but many people resist it because it is painful. When grief is resisted or suppressed, it can linger for years and manifest as depression, anxiety, or physical illness. Hawkins encourages readers to fully experience grief without trying to avoid or escape it. By allowing the emotion to be felt and expressed, we can move through the grieving process and eventually find peace. He also points out that grief is not limited to the loss of people or things. It can also arise from the loss of a sense of identity, security, or purpose. Whatever the source of grief, the key to healing is allowing oneself to feel the emotion fully and then letting it go. Grief, like all emotions, is temporary. When we allow ourselves to grieve, we eventually move through the pain and come out the other side with a deeper understanding of life and a greater capacity for love and joy. Chapter 10: Love and Joy. In this chapter, Hawkins explores the higher levels of consciousness, particularly love and joy. These emotions are the natural states that we experience when we have let go of lower emotions such as fear, anger, and guilt. Hawkins explains that love is not just an emotion, but a state of being. When we operate from a place of love, we see the world and other people through a lens of compassion, understanding, and acceptance. Love is expansive and unifying, while lower emotions are constricting and divisive. Joy, too, is a natural state that arises when we release negative emotions. Joy is not dependent on external circumstances. it is a reflection of our inner state of being. As we let go of lower emotions and move into higher states of consciousness, we experience more joy in our everyday lives. Hawkins emphasizes that love and joy are always available to us, but we must be willing to let go of the emotions that block them. By surrendering to love and joy, we open ourselves up to a more fulfilling and peaceful existence. Chapter 11: Inner Peace and Enlightenment. In the final chapter, Hawkins discusses the ultimate goal of the letting go process: inner peace and enlightenment. Inner peace is a state of being in which we are no longer affected by external circumstances. We are at peace with ourselves and the world around us, regardless of what is happening in our lives. Enlightenment, according to Hawkins, is the realization that we are not our emotions, thoughts, or experiences. We are the awareness behind them. When we reach this level of consciousness, we no longer identify with the ups and downs of life. Instead, we experience a constant state of peace, joy, and love. Hawkins emphasizes that the pathway to inner peace and enlightenment is through the continuous practice of letting go. The more we surrender our negative emotions and attachments, the closer we come to experiencing true freedom and enlightenment. Conclusion. Thank you for listening to this summary of Letting Go, The Pathway of Surrender by David R. Hawkins. If you're ready to release emotional baggage and find true inner peace, this book offers a powerful roadmap for transforming your life. Remember, the key to freedom lies in letting go, one emotion at a time. If you found this video helpful, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell for more life-changing book summaries. Keep surrendering, stay mindful, and take steps toward your inner peace.